So today we take a look at one of the most broken, potentially, tanks within World of Tanks. Of course, this is a tank that may take after the Armadillo for the Cold War game mode. We have no idea so far, but we're going to get into everything you need to know about the Teledyne Continental Motors AGS, which is of course the tank on screen right now. Now, this is a new premium tank that came in today with the new update as of the recording of this video, but when you see it, it'll be the day after the update has released, and if you want to purchase this tank, you're going to have to do it on the Cold War Tanks store, and it will set you back minimal of 15,910 gold, or if you want the fully primed bundle, 17,690 gold, which is, to be honest with you, not worth it. One singular tank for about £40, that doesn't seem quite good with me. Anyway, regardless of that, let's take a look at how good it is within the game and whether or not, if you do spend that £40, whether it would have been worth it. Right, so first things first, let's look at the statistics of the tank, because obviously they're one of the key statistics that really determines whether a tank is going to be good, and so we can get a good understanding of whether it's good, or whether, when I have that gameplay later on in the video, if it's actually characteristic of the tank, or whether I get lucky or whether I get unlucky within those gameplays that we will be playing live. So, horsepower, 500. We've got a 72.4 kilometers an hour top forward speed with a 17.7 reverse speed, which is actually okay. However, when you compare it to some of the heavy tanks that are at the exact same tier, well, it's not that much faster. The main battle tank 70, the MBT 70 that was part of last season's tanks reward, I believe, was 64 kilometers an hour top speed, so it's not that much faster considerably than the heavy tanks at its tier. Of course, however, this thing gets the main armament that the heavy tanks just don't get. This has quite possibly one of the most weird autoloaders I've ever seen within World of Tanks, and certainly one of the highest clip potential in any autoloader within World of Tanks, and that is because it gets a 9-shot 480 damage autoloader with a grand total of 4,320 damage clip potential with one salvo. Now let's bear in mind that it will take you about 25 seconds to fully unload your entire salvo of 9 rounds, and hence why the rate of fire is 8.44 rounds a minute, less than the amounts of shots in your clip. So it takes a long time to reload, 36 seconds in fact, and so this one is not a particularly very fast firing tank, and you're going to be on that reload for a long time, where you best hope you don't get spotted, and that's where taking concealment with this tank is going to be the best for you. Now, I think the key thing about this tank is, of course, making sure that you stay hidden and making sure that those rounds are going into your opponents quickly enough, but because they do, 1,500 meters a second is more than enough for them to go straight into you, rather than something like the M50 Ontos, which we looked at last week, where the shell velocity is 503 with its autoloader of 105 or 106 millimeter cannons with 6 of them. So yes, this tank will definitely have a much easier time targeting your opponents at long ranges and short ranges, and you're probably more likely to pen with this thing, having that 421 millimeters of standard penetration and 494 with your premium rounds. If we compare it to the MBT 70, you have significant advantages over the penetration values of that tank, and any tank that I really own from that Cold War era, this has one of the highest. So as a light tank, you're going to be able to really penetrate a lot of those heavy tanks within the Detente era, and of course this is the top tier era tank. With this, it also comes with a nice silver bonus of 150% as normal. It's not a tank that doesn't receive any silver bonuses, so you're going to be earning a lot, and I mean a lot of silver, if you have a fantastic game with this tank, as I'm sure many of you will be expecting if you've ever played the Cold War game mode. The tank also has a nice chunk of hit points. I think we can't really say that it doesn't have, because look at that, 2,750 hit points means you can take a couple of rounds before being sent back to the garage, and it enables you, when you're in the later half of the battle, when you're using those hit points hopefully effectively, because hit points on light tanks tend to come in much more clutch at the end of the game, so you don't want to be losing your hit points at the beginning, at least hopefully not, and then we'll be able to, you know, pump out a lot of damage against some of the singled out heavy tanks or medium tanks or whatever you're coming up against at that later half of the game with the autoloader, which, as we've talked about, becomes more deadly as you go on in the game. The autoloaders become super deadly later half of the game, and therefore, being a light tank which also gets more deadly towards the end of the game, let's just hope you can survive till the end. As far as chatting about the tank, I think we have pretty much covered the key aspects, and I think whilst we're in the game, I think that's going to be the best way to discover whether the vision range of this tank, being a light tank, is enough, or whether or not we should be looking elsewhere for a traditional light tank, and whether this is more of a novel one. Let's see whether it is overpowered, and let's check out what it can do. Right then, so we are here in the first gameplay, of course, on El Alamein, and we are in a matchup which puts us against two enemy TCM AGSs, and of course we've got one on our team, so it appears like a couple of you at least have been able to purchase this tank since its release today. As of the recording of it, obviously, I'm sure many more of you will decide to purchase this tank eventually, of course costing that £40, which I really do think is too much for any real tank within the game, regardless of how broken or how overpowered it may be within said game. So I think it's really something that I don't really like from Wargaming's mentality recently, is introducing these broken premium tanks from the Cold War line, which have just led to this kind of problem with just overpowered stuff just coming constantly into the game, and that's what Wargaming's mentality seems to be, at least with their most recent additions, and I don't like it whatsoever, and I really hope that they kind of move away from that mentality where it's just, oh well, we'll just release another broken premium tank that people pay £40 for, and then yeah, it really ruins the whole game aspect that they're trying to produce within this game mode, and I don't think they realise that when they're implementing decisions like this into the game itself. So you can see we've managed to actually dish out a fair amount of damage, nothing absolutely crazy, but you can see it's definitely easy with this tank. Of course, we've bounced a couple of rounds, which is, you know, probably likely in a lot of these tanks. You know, you're not going to be able to fully pen every single round, especially when there's things like spaced armor within World of Tanks. Now, you see, even with the small amount of Eclipse, or well, damaging hits that we've actually done with the AGMS, we've still managed to deal nearly 2,000 damage super quickly. Am I saying that that's a fantastic result for a tank that's, you know, supposedly probably like tier 14 within World of Tanks? Well, no, definitely not, and you can see reflected by the XP amount that we're getting in these games that it's not particularly that fantastic. What you can see is we can actually spot opponents on the enemy team over there, and we're putting rounds into them, which is quite nice. And as these boys are moving up and they're being aggressive, as we just get pushed by one of the teammates, thank you very much, I really do appreciate that. We're getting definitely a lot of lag here, which is not what you want to see within the game, but you can see now we're just picking apart opponents that are just crossing open fields, and this is probably where you want this tank to be in, because it's so easy. You're so easy to just pump out that damage so quickly, and this is what we're doing, just constant harassment of the opponents that we're playing up against, and they really have no chance at doing very much back to us because we have that fantastic vision range of a light tank. And so the Cold War game mode really does feature quite heavily on having low concealment and being able to remain undetected, or at least use your hidden ability, which I thought would be very underestimated at the beginning when I first played the game mode, whereby, you know, everyone's spotted anyway and people don't really need camo. But yeah, it definitely came in clutch for a lot of the scenarios that I've been in, at least on the game mode. And of course, I'm sure many of you will agree as well that actually having that camo factor that's so low, such like the Armadillo was in the game mode, has led to quite a bit of imbalance, let's say, some of the tiers and some of the regions at which you'll be playing. I think that there's quite a few problems. I'm not saying that there aren't problems with this game mode, but yeah, there's certainly quite a few tanks that really do need a nerf, and you're seeing quite a few of them right here. Well, so far we've managed to pick up a huge amount of damage, really, considering, you know, we're playing in a pretty much auto-loading light tank that we're lagging as well quite hard, and we're managing to still pick up shots into this Stingray here, and it's pretty easy, you know, nothing real competitive within this game. And what you can see us doing is just finishing off that opponent, because remember, when you're an autoloader, you want to be focusing opponents that are the most threatening to you. And what the problem is when you've got this much lag is that it's not very easy to consistently deal damage. But you can see where we're attempting. We've got a lot of people trying to chase us down, like this M1A2 Abrams, which is of course the tier 10 British kind of tank. I say, well, not British. What am I even on about? It's not even British in the first place. It's American, of course. But yeah, the Independence era tank. And this is where it's a little bit tedious, because of course when you're reloading and the opponents don't really have much of a chance against you. And so yes, we are probably going to win this game unless this light tank pulls something magic out of his backside. But it's looking unlikely, and he's on one shot of damage. However, the T-72 may just get taken out, but no. Yes, that is the end of this game, and of course we'll be looking at going into a second gameplay to show you some more of how the tank plays in a little more competitive matchup, because essentially we were just farming opponents from pretty long range and being able to get nearly 8,000 damage. Of course, with the ×2 silver boost that we've been using with this tank, 552,600 silver in one singular game. Absolutely no extras with that, so that is the base silver cost from having a ×2 booster on it. Of course, you will be looking at probably 270,000 without the ×2 silver, but that is crazy for one singular game that lasted, what's that, 5 minutes? You could essentially be earning millions and millions per hour with this thing, and so that's definitely one benefit of playing in a tank like that. Of course, we did have a pretty reasonable game in it, and so we can't really complain too much. Now, moving into the second gameplay, and we'll catch you there. So jumping into the second gameplay of today, of course on Kalbang, one of the maps that came in a couple months back, and we managed to play quite a few games on it, and I really do quite enjoy this map. Whether or not it's the pinnacle of some of the maps that Wargaming had developed, well, I wouldn't say that. But I definitely think it's one of the better ones, and that can't be really said for a lot. And I mean a lot of Wargaming maps, especially console exclusives, but they've actually done a pretty good job with the console exclusives that they have actually made within the game. So I don't think we can begrudge them too much, but we can definitely be pretty negative of some of them that they've brought into the game. So you see what we're doing here is early on picking off some of the tanks that are crossing in the later half of this game, or the later section of this game, and you can see we're just picking those opponents apart and we're putting rounds into them constantly. And this is where this tank becomes pretty nice, is just being able to lock down a lot of the tanks on the enemy team and being able to consistently deal that damage, and that's something that I do enjoy with some of these sort of style tanks, is just having the sheer ability to just knock out a load of damage. Nearly 2,000. It seems like this one is a really stealthy and huge damage dealer within Cold War. Certainly not had the most amazing game where we're having thousands and thousands and thousands of damage looking in the 10k region, but considering the first game we played, we got 8,000 damage very easily, and we didn't even manage to take a single shot within that. I don't think you can complain very much about this tank, and I think that this may just be one of the better ones that Wargaming have released. Is it Armadillo level? Well, that's yet to be decided, and I guess only time will really tell, but I definitely think it could potentially be Armadillo level, especially considering the amount of alpha that this thing really does get. as part of it being a tank within Cold War. Now, the one problem we may see here is, of course, the speed backwards, which is pretty mediocre. It's nothing very special, and so we have to be a little bit careful when we're talking about the speed of the tank. And so, yes, forward it may go 70, but backwards only 17 makes it a little bit harder for you to consistently get away from some of those opponents you might be playing against. Now, with the ammo capacity, 9 rounds of standard ammunition with high penetration, meaning that you don't really need to fire much premium, has allowed this tank to really rack up that silver, and so that's why you're seeing such high silver values with this tank. And so you really have to contribute that into the silver earning potential of the tank, because you may have a tank that has 65% silver earn, but if you're having to spam premium consistently in that tank, then it's not really that good, is it? So that's something else that this tank does very, very well, and something that you have to take into account if you're wanting to spend, yet again, that £40 that it will cost you to do and have the pleasure of playing said tank. Now, as much as we hate playing with lag, we have to deal with it sometimes, and so for this review, unfortunately, we do have lag, but, auto-aim still work, so we can't complain too much. Anyway, moving on with this, we are, of course, getting around the backside of one of these tanks, and we can now move and progress forward to try and deal some damage on this side, because we did realise that our left-hand side flank was failing, and given the fact that we really do need to push one side, or at least gain a major victory or a decisive victory on one of these sides in order to avoid being sausage sandwiched, as I always talk about on World of Tanks, making sure that you don't get sausage sandwiched, because it doesn't go too well for a lot of the tanks that manage to get into that sort of position. Now, what we'll do is we'll just wait for this M1 to move up, although the lag is just saying absolutely not right now, and it's really actually quite frustrating to be having this kind of lag, especially when you could be dealing damage to your opponents and helping out your team. But never mind, Wargaming, we won't want to do that anyway. So what can we do from this point? Well, I think we should probably take out this M1 if we possibly can, and of course help out this Stingray, or the T-72BU even, with the opposing tanks that are now making their entrance or appearance, and if we can do that, then we can really push out quite a nice chunk of damage onto the opponents that are moving forward. If we can do that, we'll then stop a lot of the tanks from dealing damage to our opponents or our teammates, and then we have to kind of deal with this light tank that's of course cresting the ridges around here. But the problem is of course having that long reload. It makes it very difficult to impact during those periods of time where you are reloading. But to be honest with you, 36 seconds may sound a lot, but in game it's actually not as much as you would think. And so I don't think that it's the be all and end all for saying that this tank is awful, but it definitely makes a difference to the kind of potential damage that you can get during some of those situations where you may not be able to deal your damage that consistently. So be aware, this tank, although it may be able to deal damage pretty consistently, when you are reloaded you do have that period of time, so make sure that you stay hidden and make sure that you play a lot more passively than some of the heavy tanks within Cold War. Of course, within those two games, I actually don't think we believe we actually took a single hit, which is surprising. But I guess that showcases that the tank is just pretty good. I think it's an all-rounder. I think it definitely works for those of you interested in autoloaders. And yes, 2 battles, 1.06 million silver earned is absolutely no problem with me. It's just crazy, the Cold War game mode for earning that silver. And of course, if you want to check out how to maximize your silver earn within World of Tanks, you can check out one of my previous videos looking at the silver earning potential of those tanks. So make sure you do that if you're interested. And of course, check out some of the other videos. Let me know what you think of this tank. Is it another broken armadillo at the top tier? As far as my opinion goes, it's looking like it. Much to your disappointment probably if you play that top tier. there we go. That is today's video. Of course, check out some of the other ones on screen right now, and hopefully you'll enjoy those, and hopefully you'll join me back for another review video coming soon. Thank you. Goodbye.